Okay fellas, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to give you a short safety refresher on what you can expect and what's going to be expected of you whenever you come out on a construction site. I'm here on a Lone Star project in Mount Bellevue. We just completed frac 1. We're working on frac 2. So what we have here is we have two different work areas. We have an active unit, commissioned unit type work area, and we have a new construction work area. But the first thing you want to do whenever you come out to a project is you want to get up with the safety department. And the safety department is going to tell you any specifics that you need to know before you go into the area that you want to visit. The first thing you need to find out whenever you come to a construction site is what's the PPE requirements. If there's anything going on that you need to be aware of, and also where are the rally points? What are the evacuation alarms? Those are the key basics that you need to know. Now if you look behind me, you'll see frac 1. Frac 1 is right up this road. On the northeast corner is the control room. That's where you'll get up with operations. That's going to be the first thing you do whenever you go to frac 1. You get up with operations, you find out if there's anything you need to know specific about the unit, anything you need to be aware of. Now frac 1 starts right up here at the 601 rack. Just south of the 601 rack is the meter and skids. You can see how they've already started building fences around this area. Now frac 1 extends all the way from 601 rack all the way down to the flare on the south side. Now this whole area, frac 1 is controlled by operations. All permitting is going to be done through operations, and there's some specific PPE requirements for frac 1. Frac 1, obvious, you have to have FRCs, hard hats, safety glasses, hearing protection, leather work boots. These are the basic PPE requirements for frac 1. Now if you look behind me, you'll see frac 2. Well, frac 2 is a new construction area. This is the south side of frac 2, which butts up to the 601 rack, which is part of frac 1. That's where the dividing line is. Starting at that fence to the south, everything is FRC. At that fence to the north, FRCs are not required. But we still need to make sure we have our hard hats, we have our safety glasses, we have our long pants and work boots. If you're going to be doing any climbing, of course, you're going to have your safety harness. You're also going to have your gloves. There are some areas where hearing protection is required depending on the noise levels in that area. But as always, we're going to use the buddy system. Nobody should be working alone in frac 1 or in frac 2. Always have a buddy. And definitely we want to fill out an STA. We get out to our work site, we see what's going on in that area, where we're going to be working, we fill out an STA. There are 4 alarms for the Lone Star frac 1 facility. There is a main facility evacuation siren, there is a gas release siren, there is a fire siren, and there is an all clear siren. This is the facility evacuation siren. This is the sound of the gas release siren. This is what the fire siren sounds like. This is the all clear siren. Now, whenever you hear the alarms in frac 1 go off, whether it's the evacuation alarm, whether it's the gas release or the fire alarm, everybody in frac 1 and everybody in frac 2 is going to go ahead, stop what they're doing, and they're going to make their way to the lunch tent. At this point, it's important to get a head count So you're going to need to get up with the safety department member that you checked in with whenever you came to the job. You'll wait in the lunch tent or the main office until the all clear is sounded and you're given permission to go back into the work area. Now, the number one thing that we need to be aware of when we're going into the construction area is your surroundings. You need to know what's going on. Okay, now you've come out to the job site, you've gotten up with the safety department, you've talked to them about what you want to do, and they've talked to you about what the requirements are and what's going on in your area. What do you need to look out for in the construction area? Well, first of all, you got traffic. You've got all sorts of construction equipment moving about the site. You've got buggies, you've got work trucks, and these are on the perimeter roads mostly, but you need to be aware that they're going to be moving about the job. So always pay attention to your surroundings. When you get into the construction site, you know, within the perimeter roads, you need to be aware of the construction that's going on. There's a lot of overhead lifts you need to look out for. The rigging department does a good job at keeping people out of the way, creating awareness whenever they start making a lift, but nonetheless, you got to do your part and you got to look out for what's going on. The job starts off, we've got a lot of dirt work, we've got a lot of open holes. You need to be mindful of the barricades. There's going to be barricades around all excavations. We don't want anybody walking off into an excavation, so we barricade it. Be mindful of the barricades. Now, as the job progresses, you have fewer open holes, but the structure starts to get built and you begin to have overhead work. So definitely you got to pay attention to what's going on overhead. If you're underneath the structure, there's a good chance something's going on above you. So pay attention to the barricades that are on the ground, because most of the time overhead work is going to have a barricade and it's going to designate it as such. Now, sometimes there won't be a barricade. They'll have a ground man or a spotter. Now, these are short duration jobs. They're going to go up, they're going to hang a chain fall, whatever it may be. Listen to the direction of the spotter or the ground man. So we really need to be mindful of what could be going on overhead. Now, as a company, we've been pushing falling object prevention. We've rolled out a new program on the job, and it's going really well, but you never know. It's just a good idea not to walk below where people are working. Now, conditions on a job are always changing due to rains and different factors. Right now, the job site conditions are very good. As you can see, the ground is level. It's a good walk-in working surface. They're getting ready to bring in the towers. They're preparing some areas to lay down the towers. As you can see, we've got a couple of large open areas that are fairly well manicured, and it makes it easy to get around. Now, as you can see, a couple of weeks ago, this is what we were dealing with. There was an excessive amount of mud, excessive amount of slip, trip hazards. It just wasn't easy to get around the job. When the site conditions are poor like this, it slows work down, and you also have the chance of getting your feet stuck in the mud, twisting your knee, twisting your ankles, slipping on the concrete that's got the mud on there. These things can happen, and they do cause injuries, so that's something you need to be aware of. Also, if you do any climbing when it's muddy, you got to be careful to clean your boots off. You'd be surprised how easy it is to slip on a ladder while you're trying to climb up if your boots are muddy or if your hands are wet. Something you also need to look out for is staged material. Now, this is a new construction project, and we've got to have material in there close to the unit so the guys can grab it and install it. A lot of times you'll find little lay down areas or pipe spools ready to be installed, or iron ready to be installed, and they're having it staged right next to where they're working. It's a good idea to walk around these areas. Don't walk through it. Don't try to step over all this pipe. You could end up tripping, falling, hurting yourself. You catch yourself with your arm or you land on your knee, could result in an injury. We don't want that happening. So walk around the staged material. Do your best to plan your travel path appropriately. Okay, now let's talk about scaffolds. All scaffolds are inspected daily by a competent person. Before you use a scaffold, you need to check the tag and make sure it has been inspected by a competent person, and go ahead and give it a look and inspect it yourself. Make sure that the ladder has adequate access. Make sure you're not going to be in a bind trying to access the scaffold, because we find scaffolds with limited access sometimes. Okay, all scaffolds over 6 feet are going to require 100% tie-off. And also, for scaffolds that are 13 foot high and higher, they're also going to be equipped with a yo-yo. It's a retractable lanyard that it's required that we use that yo-yo if one exists. All right, fellas, what we're talking about today is fall protection usage. Specifically, when we can and cannot use cheaters, what to do whenever you come up to a scaffold and you got a yo-yo on it, so forth and so on. What we have here, we have a scaffold that has a yo-yo. Anytime you have a yo-yo on a scaffold, you have to use it. Even if you're going to the first level that doesn't require a yo-yo, the yo-yo's there, we still must use the yo-yo. All scaffolds over 13 feet on the project are going to have a yo-yo, as well as all cage ladders over 13 feet. Okay, when you're dealing with a multi-level scaffold and you have a yo-yo on it, even if the first level or the second level isn't above 13 foot and it has a yo-yo, we are required to use it. We also want to make sure that we do not use ladders on a scaffold or any type of stool to gain height. If we have to, we will have the scaffold department raise the deck, do whatever we have to do so that we have proper handrails. Take notice that the employee maintains 100% tie-off while hooking up the yo-yo. He does not unhook his lanyards until the yo-yo is properly secured to his 12-inch extension. Also notice that he does not open the gate until he's hooked up to the yo-yo and ready to climb down the ladder. After you have unhooked from the yo-yo, always allow the yo-yo to retract back up slowly. Do not let go of the rope and let the yo-yo slam back into the housing. This will damage the yo-yo over time. Whenever we're hooking onto a yo-yo, we don't want to have this coming underneath our arm. If you were to fall, it's going to jerk on your shoulder and you're going to have a shoulder injury. What we want to do is have this yo-yo come straight out from the center of your back and straight up. This is the best place to have it. This is the only acceptable location for the yo-yo. Okay, now let's talk about cheaters. By S&B policy, we can use cheaters whenever we're in a leading edge type situation. If we don't have any primary fall protection, cheaters are authorized. That means whenever we're on the steel, we don't have handrails protecting us. Whenever we're transiting in the rack, whenever we're on pipe, things like that, making our way through the pipe rack, bull rigging, things like that, cheaters are authorized. When cheaters are not authorized would be usage on a scaffold. We cannot use cheaters on scaffolds. Also, we need to look at proper usage of the cheater. We cannot choke a cheater. What I mean by that is you cannot take the cheater and tie it back to itself and then tighten up the slack up against a beam. The only place that we can hook the cheater to is back to the O-ring on the cheater. Okay fellas, what we're doing right now is we're giving a demonstration on a few ways that we've seen people using cheaters that are not acceptable on the job. Right here we've got a cheater that's hooked to a rosette, fully lengthened out. This is not acceptable. Okay, now we have another way that we've seen cheaters being used that's not acceptable. This is referred to as choking a cheater. It's when you hook the cheater back to itself right here and let it choke up against whatever you tied off to. The only acceptable way to use a cheater is to hook it back to the O-ring on itself. If you have enough slack in your cheater to wrap it around 2 times or more, go ahead and do that. That'll prevent you from falling farther in the event that you were to fall. As I was saying earlier, we cannot use cheaters on scaffolds. We can't be tying cheaters to scaffold handrails. We also need to make sure that our lanyard or our cheater is 100% secured to our tie-off point. What I mean by that is you shouldn't be able to take your cheater or your lanyard off your tie-off point without unhooking your hook. As such, that's not an acceptable way to use a cheater or a lanyard. The proper usage of fall protection is essential to everyone's safety and also a requirement on the job. And always keep in mind, what am I about to do, what can go wrong, and what am I going to do to prevent it from going wrong. Now, if you find yourself using a ladder, all extensions ladder need to be set up in a 4-to-1 ratio. That's for every 4 foot up, the bottom has to be out 1 foot. Those ladders have to be tied off. Actually, that's all ladders. A-frames and extension ladders have to be tied off. Now, any extension ladder that's going to go up past 13 foot is also going to have a yo-yo on it, or needs one, so don't use it if it doesn't have it. And also, they need to extend beyond your landing 36 inches. Now, on a construction job, when we're building the structures, we're going to have some structures that are completed and some structures that are still in the process of being built. Those are incomplete structures. On an incomplete structure, only iron workers are allowed on that structure. There's a process that we go through where the safety department will inspect the structure after the iron workers get finished with it and allow other crafts to access. Now, you're going to know the difference between the two with a sign. We're going to put a sign that says iron workers only on all incomplete structures. So as you can see, here's another reason why it's very important to read the signs on the project and follow their direction.
Hey guys, right here is another example of an incomplete structure. You see right here we have the barricade tape at the base of this permanent ladder. As you can see up, this ladder got a yo-yo on it and it goes up to the top where swing gate's at. Now if you look over, you see there's no grating installed. So there's an open hole right there. You need to be aware of every ladder that you climb up on. You need to trace it out and make sure it is complete unless you are an iron worker and you're there to build it.
Now also on completed structures, you could run into an area that's had grating removed. Now if grating gets removed or handrails get removed, there'll be a hard barricade, there's going to be signs, and there's also going to be a permit. Whenever you cross into the area that's had grating or handrail removed from it, it's 100% tie off. You tie off before you cross those handrails, you go in there, you handle your business, and then you come out and then you untie. And also, if we're going to be climbing, we know we need to inspect our harness. What we're going to do today is run you through a basic harness inspection so that you know what to look for whenever you're checking your harness out. These need to be done prior to every shift or prior to every use, and this is on top of our monthly inspections done by a competent person. Every day you need to be looking at your harness and making sure that it's in good working order and it doesn't have any tears or cuts in the lanyard or the harness or the cheater. All right, fellas, what we're going to do, this is our body harness. We're going to work our way down these straps, make sure we don't have any cuts or burns. You'll have some fraying over time from it rubbing up against hard objects, but what you really want to look for and pay attention to is if you have any cuts. There's a couple of nicks in this one, but if it's a bad cut, it'll have some red showing. There's a red liner on the inside of this with red fibers, and if that's showing, it's definitely a bad harness. We can't use it. But work our way down, look at all the straps, Check the buckles. Important areas are right around these buckles, where these buckles are always rubbing on this loop back here. Got them over here. These are a little bit thicker. Check those. But it's real important to check around your buckles, especially back here on the D-ring. Make sure that it hasn't worn through any significant amount back here. This one is not. It's actually an old harness, but it's in fairly good shape. We also want to check our leg straps, make sure our leg straps are in good shape, make sure they're not torn in any way. A lot of times, especially with welders or pipe fitters, iron workers that do a lot of grinding and thing, they'll have burns on these, and burns are significant also. That's going to deteriorate the strength of the harness. The lanyard, harness, these extensions, and also any cheaters you use, you check them in the same manner. Now when you're dealing with your lanyard, you also want to go down and make sure that there are no cuts or burns in the straps. This one doesn't have any that I can see. But you also need to make sure that the connectors are in good working order. They should not open, they should lock. And they should only open whenever you push this locking mechanism and try to open them. Make sure they spring back whenever you let go. If they don't spring back, you need to take it to the tool room and get it replaced. Opens, doesn't open, proper spring back. Locking mechanism works, opens, proper spring back, looks good. Just like on your harness, you want to check these eyes that are sewn in, because they get worn out first typically, because they have this eye rubbing on it all the time. Okay, looking right here at this eye where it's sewn in, where I told you it gets worn quicker, we have some fabric, some red fabric showing, and that means that the outer jacket of fabric has been worn through, and it's exposing the inner fabric, and we can't allow this one to stay in service. What we do is we return this one to the tool room and get a new lanyard. These are the kind of things you need to look out for. Also, on your 12-inch extensions, you want to check the strap out, make sure it doesn't have any cuts or burns or anything like that would deteriorate it or leave a deficiency. Always check the eyes, just like on the lanyards and the harnesses, and check for proper function. Good spring back, locking mechanism works, good working order. Okay, once we've identified that our harness has the proper monthly inspection, our lanyard and our extension or any other devices, accessories that we may have on here has been inspected by a competent person for that month, which this month is green and yellow. And then we do our own personal inspection that we're going to do every day. We're going to go ahead and put on the harness. But there's a few things we need to look out for whenever we're putting it on to make sure that it's adjusted right.
You want to inspect it, or do I have to?
Now go ahead and put it on.
All right. Talk about how it's not supposed to be too tight on your legs.
Yeah. Okay, what we want to look for is our leg straps are fairly snug, but they're not too tight. You don't want a whole lot of slack in them. We want to make sure that our chest strap is across our chest. If we turn around, we want to make sure that our D-ring is in the middle of the back and centered. As I was saying, you want to make sure that the harness isn't too loose and it isn't too tight. You want to be able to work. You want to be somewhat mobile, but you don't want your harness to be hanging off of you, catching on things, and you want it to hold your body properly in the event that you were to fall. Okay, as you can see, if you don't pick your lanyards up, they're going to drag the ground. And if you allow them to drag the ground, sooner or later they're going to end up wearing right here, and we could run into a problem. Always hook them back to the harness so that you don't drag them on the ground. If you hook them back to these, whenever you're climbing up the stairs, you're going to end up catching your heels on these lanyards. So make sure you hook them up high so you don't run into that problem. You don't create your own tripping hazard. Whenever you're done using your harness, make sure you put it somewhere where it's going to be safe. Don't lay it on the ground. Find a gang box to set it on. Find something to hang it on. We don't want it being walked on. We don't want anything driving over it. JLG, scissor lifts, you know. We don't want them sitting in the mud, because we want to store these in a manner that gives the least amount of wear and tear on these harnesses, because you never know, it could save your life one day. Now, confined spaces is defined as a space that is big enough to bodily enter but not designed for continuous occupancy. Now, these can be tanks, vessels, could be excavations. That includes the vessel skirts also. Okay, all confined spaces on the project will require a permit. If it's in Frac 1, for some reason you need to go into a confined space in Frac 1, you'll be getting up with operations. They issue all permits in Frac 1. Now, Frac 2, S&B Safety Department will be issuing the permit. Confined spaces could be anything from tanks and vessels, vessel skirts, to excavations. Confined spaces will have a sign saying this is a confined space, enter by permit only. If for some reason you need to go into the confined space, you'll get up with the safety department or operations. You have to have an entry attendant. They'll issue you a permit, you handle your business, and then we get out. Now, there's going to be times when you need to use a JLG or a scissor lift to access what you want to take measurements of or take a look at. To operate a JLG requires special training done through the training department. To ride in a JLG or scissor lift also requires a lower level of training, but it does require some training. So get up with the safety department if y'all need to use a JLG. Most likely they'll provide someone to take you up, but they're going to send you through some training first. Okay, also on the project, we don't want you operating any hand tools, power tools, things like that, unless you've been specifically trained in the usage of this tool. A lot of these tools have specific hazards that you won't know unless you've been through the proper training. So don't use any tools unless you've been properly trained. Also on the job, when you're out here, if something happens, if it's a near miss, you know, something falls, or you trip and fall, or you hurt yourself in any way, you need to report to the safety department immediately. Also, if there's anything you're unsure of, ask the question. If we don't know the answer, we're going to find the answer for you. Okay, everyone, our main goal is 0 accidents and 0 injuries. We want your visit to our job site to be productive, but to be safe. The conditions on a job site and the stage of the job, it's always changing. You come out here today, it ain't gonna be the same as it was 2 weeks ago. A lot of things go on, a lot of work is getting done. It's a constant changing environment, just like you hear everybody say. From one day to the next, it's always different. So please always be aware of your surroundings. That's the most important thing that you need to take away from this, is being aware of your surroundings. There's a lot of work going on. There's a lot of activity. There's a lot of things that can hurt you. We all know that the construction environment is a hazardous environment. That's why we take so much time. We have so many safety meetings. We have so much training. We try to talk to people. We try to coach people. We want to prepare you for the environment you're working in. We want to prepare you for the environment you're going to be in. We know it's hazardous. We try to take every precaution in order to make it safe. Before you do anything on a job site, you need to be thinking, what am I about to do? What can go wrong with what I'm going to do? And how am I going to prevent it from going wrong? If you keep that in your mind, you're going to prevent accidents, you're going to prevent injuries. And that's our goal here, to have a safe job site, to have everybody go home the way they came to our job. Thank you all for your attention, and have a safe day.